just don't have this opportunity very often to provide staff with food. It's not budgeted, it's not allowed, but when we have someone who's very generous and will help us out in that way, and you all are so very observant, we want to make sure that opportunity is available. So again, welcome everyone. We have a nice agenda before us, and I'm not going to say another word. I'm just going to call up our director and let her get going today.
She's going to say lots more words, just not right now. So good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all here. I'm glad we meet quarterly so we find out who's had babies and all that stuff that some people in the Resource Center can't seem to share when there's a new baby. But I've given up an assignment now, so from now on, so congratulations to the new moms and dads. We're very lucky to be joined today by some of our commissioners from our Commission on Aging. And for some of these folks, this is their first staff meeting with us. So I'd like to, after I introduce them all, give them a warm welcome. First of all, Patsy Delgado. Patsy, wave your hand. The chairperson of our commission, the famous Hogan. Someone who's been on our commission ever since I've been the director, our Commissioner Emeritus, Gwen Jackson. Our new fun-loving little commissioner, Deborah Chupka. Mary Kepler from Wauwatosa. And from the city of Franklin, who came on his motorcycle, Greg Whitaker. And last but not least, the chair of our Service Delivery Committee, Barbara Wyatt Simpson. And I'd also like to introduce Linda Garner. Linda Garner is Gwen Jackson's senior companion, and it's always a joy to have her. Well, pretty much fun, huh? And thank you so much, Gina and everyone, for sponsoring our lunch. It was really great. I think expectations have been raised now, so we're in big trouble. So, we have a big addition to this agenda, which is why I'm not going to talk very much, and that's voter ID. You all know the court just gave a ruling that voter ID is in effect for the November election. We have 6 weeks to see to it that our seniors are not disenfranchised in this election. It is going to take all of us, all of everyone you know, all of our partners in the community to make sure that everyone knows the rules around this election. Because it would really be a shame if someone who had voted for 40 or 50 or 60 years got to the polls and was told they couldn't vote. We can't allow that to happen. So there are some of our partner organizations who believe that the whole federal appeals court will overturn this ruling before the election. We can't count on that. We don't have enough time to count on that. If it happens, we'll celebrate. But right now, we have to help our seniors and our people with disabilities get the proper ID so that they can vote. And we know you're hoping to help, and we're going to talk to you about that in a minute. I also want to talk to you about the fact that we are one of the about 20 counties in Wisconsin who have been awarded a dementia care specialist position. We'll be interviewing for that position next week. We're pretty excited because we have so many terrific partners in this community who are doing so much. And one of the things we need to do is chronicle everything that's being done to fight Alzheimer's disease and to educate caregivers and to help persons who suffer with Alzheimer's disease and dementia in this community. And we're going to have a position that's completely dedicated to that. And we just found out that the state of Wisconsin has prevailed in writing a very large national grant so that we will get another dementia care specialist specifically to work in underserved communities in the African American and, Hispanic community. So we are really, really lucky. So stay tuned. Milwaukee County is going to be the best place in this state if you have the misfortune to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, to have people who care about you, who care about your caregivers, and are here to help. So that's pretty exciting. We think we made it pretty good through our county budget process. We're supposed to find out next Friday what our budget is, but that's been postponed. We won't see the county budget till October 1st. So, pray to whomever you pray to. I think we'll be okay, but it doesn't hurt to have a few words. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Jonette, for making sure that that food was there and good, and she even bought barbecue sauce in case it wasn't here, but of course it was. But she had it in her purse, just in case. I'll tell you a little story. Last week we went to a conference, and agencies were supposed to bring a gift to get raffled off, a gift. Jonette was in charge of that gift. It turned out to be $1,000 worth of gift certificates and objects from Milwaukee. It was called Come Vacation in Milwaukee County. It had Brewers tickets, Bucks tickets, $100 Speedway gas card. It was, Jonette is an overachiever. But we're pretty lucky to have her. Okay, so we are now going to hear about our voter ID campaign, and believe me, we just started this Tuesday, and we've got a long way to go, but we think we've got a good start. So to talk to you about what we're doing, Jonette Arms and John Janowski, come on up.
Hello again. I actually don't have a lot to say. I think Stephanie gave a lot of the background and a lot of information on how urgent this issue is. However, I want to direct your attention to your folder. There is a letter from our director, Stephanie Stein, that's a cover to what it is that we need to do, and it kind of introduces this packet to you. Please make sure that you read over the letter, and you also look through the packet very thoroughly. But I do want to say, actually Stephanie called a meeting with us on Tuesday, called a kind of emergency meeting, really wanting us to help strategize how we were going to get the word out and educate the community with only 6 weeks turnover time to prepare everyone to vote with this new Voter ID Law Act 21. And it primarily says that everyone pretty much has to have a Wisconsin photo ID, valid ID, and there are some nuances to it, some exclusions, but people need to understand that. So it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of working together and collaborating to make sure we get the word out broadly. Staff have been working intensely. They pretty much stopped everything they were doing. Randy and John were working hard on putting this packet together, creating documents to make sure that we have easy to understand information. Our older adults and people with disabilities are the most vulnerable and can be disenfranchised from this type of law on the books. But without further ado, I just want to make sure that, again, you look at this letter, read it over, read through the packet, but I'm going to turn things over to John so he can help explain exactly what's in the packet.
Guess what I worked on this week? All right. This is one of those things that I didn't expect to be working on when I started with the county 2 years ago. And I'm learning like everybody else. So, first of all, I just want to say I am not voting rights expert. I'm learning every day like everybody else, including, I think, some of the people that wrote the law. So my goal today is to just walk you through the packet. We're not going to go through each and every detail in here. I think the other thing to realize is that this is just a starting point. So in the last 2.5 days, we wanted to put a packet together that would at least get you started and give you some of the basic information about the law. And there will be more information that we'll be customizing for our partner agencies. We're also going to be customizing a document for some of the consumers in the community, especially those who are permanently homebound. So Randy and I will certainly be working on that right away next week. But for the purposes of today, this is a starting point, and we'll start with the left-hand side of the packet. So as Joan had said, the letter on the front is really the call to action that Stephanie mentioned, and reiterating the importance of the consequences of this election and how we need to help make sure that people understand the law. So the first document on the left-hand side is entitled Acceptable Photo IDs. And this is a document from the State of Wisconsin Government Accountability Board. And really, if there's any other website that this is really the primary website that you should be consulting at any point to learn more about voter ID. The State Government Accountability Board is in charge of our elections across the state, and so this document is from their office, and it is updated, and it gives you a real quick sort of Q&A about the law. It tells you things like you don't need a separate voter ID card. If you currently have a driver's license or a Wisconsin ID, that is sufficient. But if you don't, there's another process that needs to go into place and that you need to follow. So this document walks you through what those acceptable items are to get a photo ID, and it talks about what items are not acceptable for voting purposes. And there are even some exemptions, which are indicated in the back of this document. There are some documents which don't contain a photo, which can be used for voting purposes. So anyway, this is really, I guess, the first document that you should pay attention to because it's just been updated by the Government Accountability Board. The second document in the packet is, we thought, was a nice picture, color copy of acceptable photo IDs. Most of these, I think, we're familiar with, but some of them, maybe not. So I thought it was a nice representation, so we can actually see what IDs are acceptable in terms of this law. The third document is entitled Absentee Voting, Wisconsin's new photo ID law. It should be the third document on the left-hand side of your packet. And it's a front and back document. One caveat about this one, though, is that the Government Accountability Board has not updated this document yet. So you'll notice on the front it says what has changed in the law, and it says as of June 2011. So when I called their staff this week, I said, when do you expect to have this updated? And they said, any day now. So it's not updated yet. Their point, though, is that the nuts and bolts on this 2-page document are still basically going to remain in place. But for our purposes, it still hasn't been updated yet, so as soon as it is, we will certainly get that to you and to our partners. And this document goes through some of the groups that are actually exempt from providing photo ID. So now, those who are voting by absentee ballot do have to provide photo ID, but there are some groups that are exempt from that requirement, and it lists those here. And then one other point I wanted to note on the front of this document, toward the bottom, if you notice it says indefinitely confined electors, and that's a pretty important population for our purposes. And if you dig out the next document in your packet, it should be the 4th document on the left-hand side of your packet. This goes into, in one page, who is an indefinitely confined voter. And the key here is that indefinitely confined voters, these are people because of age, physical illness, disability, have difficulty getting to the polling place. And it tells you in this document where they reside, what types of settings they reside in, and it also tells you that these individuals do not have to provide a copy of their photo ID. So this is an exception to the law. So it's a very important population, certainly, in terms of who we work with. And I wanted to make sure that you had this document. This is also from the Wisconsin Government Accountability Board, and it is updated. I checked with their staff, they said this is good to go. So like I said, in one page, it outlines who these individuals are. And the other key point here that I would mention, and we're going to be working on this next week, is instead of providing a copy of their photo ID, all they need is a signature from a witness who is witnessing the voting process. And for our purposes, we're going to be working with drivers who deliver home-delivered meals throughout the community, and we want to make sure that we're actually going to create a customized document for that consumer, because it is a special population, and we want them to know that they do not have to show a photo ID, but there are some things that we can help with for that process. So that's a document that we'll be working on next week, and as soon as it's done, we will make sure that you have all of it as well, because everything that we create, you will get, okay? So that's indefinitely confined voters. I did want to touch on that. The last document on the left-hand side, thank you, Steve Peterson, for forwarding this to me this morning. I thought it was a really nice summary of giving you some context behind how we got here. And it's dated Wednesday, so it's very recent, but it gives you some good context about how the law was put into place, the various appeals process to this point, and the fact that about 300,000 voters don't have the correct forms of identification, or any forms of identification that are required to vote. Many of whom certainly reside right here in Milwaukee County, and most of those right in the city of Milwaukee. So this is a very relevant, I think, document, and hopefully it gives you some context behind how we got here and where we're going. And it also mentions the appeal that Stephanie mentioned. If that appeal is successful, we will certainly celebrate, but we are definitely not counting on that. All right, moving to the right-hand side of the packet. And this sort of pamphlet, you must have an ID to vote. This is really still in draft form, so it still needs some tweaking. We just didn't have enough time to format it the way that we'd like, but I really want to thank Randy in particular for dropping everything and designing this in about half a day. So kudos to him for doing that. But this document, the first 2 pages of this document really focus on individuals who need a new Wisconsin ID. And it tells tells you exactly what these individuals need to bring to prove their identity and prove their residency. So two things that individuals will have to show to prove to get a new Wisconsin ID. So, like I said, it's not exactly formatted the way that we'd like, but the first 2 pages says to prove your identity, you need one of these items. So all of those bullet points there, individuals need one of those items to prove their identity to get a new ID. And then the next 2 pages focus on residency. So to get that new Wisconsin ID, if you don't already have one, you need one of these items. And it separates printed electronic copies versus originals. There's that distinction as well. But one of these items will be needed to prove residency to get that new Wisconsin ID. So I thought that was important for you to know up front. And then if you turn the page, and again, apologies for the formatting, but there's some other things that you should know about voting. These are just things that I picked up in articles in my research. The first thing I note there is something we already talked about. You definitely can find individual, because that's very important. But there's other things here about absentee balloting. One other thing, I guess I'll get to this in a minute, regarding our Milwaukee County Register of Deeds, because they're also involved in this process. So I tried to put some websites on here that might be helpful for you to get more information. Things like there's no more weekend voting. That's part of the new law. The hours are limited in terms of when you can provide absentee ballots or file absentee ballots. And other things in here. There's residency, timelines, election observers. I don't know if you knew this, but when you go to the polls on November 4th, you're going to see people standing next to the sign-in and registration table, and they're going to be very close to you. And they're going to be monitoring what you do and what sort of proof is being provided. That's also part of the law. They can stand 3 to 8 feet away from you, and you're going to see them 3 feet away from you. So don't be surprised if you have eyeballs watching exactly what you do when you sign in and register. So there's that information as well, and hopefully that gives you some more resources. And I am putting together a resource, like a cumulative resource list with the Government Accountability Board website, the Milwaukee County Election Commission, City of Milwaukee Election Commission, and other resources for you. I'll be doing that over the weekend, and I'll have that ready on Monday. And then finally, on the right-hand side of your packet, I put some of the relevant forms that are important in this process. The first form is called the Wisconsin Identification Card Application. So the front of this document, and this is from the State Department of Transportation, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the place that we get Wisconsin IDs from and our driver's licenses from. The front of this document explains you can get an ID card if you do not have a valid driver's license. If you've never had a Wisconsin driver's license or ID card, but you're renewing your ID card, you need to present acceptable proof, and it lists what that proof is, and so on. So this is the front side of this document is basically the instructions if you're seeking to apply for a Wisconsin ID, not a driver's license, but a Wisconsin ID. And the back of this document, I put a copy of the actual form, okay? Just so you can see what it looks like and you're familiar with it. And all of these forms are downloadable, and that document I just mentioned that I'll be getting ready for you on Monday, I will put the links to these documents in there so you have those. The second document in your packet on the right-hand side, it says DMV Administrator Petition, Unavailable Documentation. This is the other form that individuals will need to fill out if an individual does not have proof of their name or proof of their date of birth, okay? And there are certainly many people out there that do not have that information. So that's another State Department of Transportation, Department of Motor Vehicles document that will have to be filled out for individuals who do not have that proof and are seeking to either prove their citizenship or get proof of their name and date of birth. So that's the second important document. And then the last set of documents I just paper clipped together because they're all related. The first document is called Acceptable Forms of Identification. These 3 documents are straight from our Milwaukee County Register of Deeds office, and they just posted these yesterday afternoon, I think because I asked them, because nothing was there yesterday morning. So they were put together pretty quickly. The key point here is that you can get a free copy of your birth certificate from the Milwaukee County Register of Deeds. You currently have to pay $20 for that service. You can get a free copy for voting purposes if you follow these directions, okay? So that's why I paperclip these documents together, because it says what are the acceptable forms of identification that you need to get that document. The second document is the form that the Register of Deeds just posted, and it simply says request for a free birth record needed to obtain an ID card for purposes of voting. So someone has to fill that out. Again, this is through the Register of Deeds office in the county courthouse. And then the third document is also the Register of Deeds form. It's called the Wisconsin Birth Certificate Application. And that's the other form that individuals need to fill out to get a copy of their birth certificate if they do not have it. And that is, again, free. So that website and a link to these forms I will also be including in that document that I'll have put together on Monday. All right. So that's what I've got for now. Like I said, I apologize because it's not exactly formatted the way that we'd like it, but I hope that at least gives you some context and some background behind how we got here, what's happening in the next 6 weeks, and as Stephanie and Jonette said, we are definitely going to have to work very hard and work together to get the word out to our community about this. But I know we can do it, and if there's anything else that I can do to help you, whether it's other resources or you'd like something formatted in a different way, or you're not sure, I'll do my best to help you or at least point you in the right direction so that you can get your questions answered, okay? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Yes, Gwen. Gwen was pointing out that she has to pay $3.50 each way to get transported to her polling place, and she's wondering what we can do about that. And Stephanie said we'll ask the county executive to see if we can do something about that, because that's a really good point. Yes, Mary. It's okay, they can still use it. There's actually a date, and it is in here. And I believe if the license if it expires after the last general election, which was in November of 2012, then that license is okay to show for proof, to show as a photo ID. So the last general election was November 6, 2012, so if it expires after that date, it's okay. Yes? No. And in fact, I'm in the same boat. My address on my license is not correct, but it's after November of 2012, and as long as your license expires after that date, it's not the address that's important. It's the photo. Yes, ma'am. Yes.